Hello, I'm Todd Hall, President and CEO of TrueLiant. As we mark our 70th anniversary in 2022, we reflect on a rich history that would not be possible without the support of the great city of Winston-Salem. From our humble beginnings in 1952 to the present, where we will soon serve over 300,000 members, hire our 1,000th employee, and exceed $4 billion in assets, to a future poised for continued growth. I am proud of the work we are doing together. TrueLiant is grateful for and remains committed to Winston-Salem and all of Forsyth County.
Welcome to the Greater Conversations podcast. I'm Deetra Miller, the Director of Member Relations and Engagement at Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. We'll use this platform to showcase our local businesses, our community, and their stories. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I'm super excited to have here with us today Mr. Bill McClain, the founder of Mr. Bill's Productions. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for being here with us today.
My pleasure.
I cannot wait to dive in and talk to you about Mr. Bill's Productions and just you in particular and your background with everything that you do for this community, because I don't know, you're kind of like a superhero in a way that that folks just don't know about. So I want to start a little bit with you telling us about Mr. Bill's Productions. How did it get started? How long has it been around?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me.
Of course.
This superhero thing, if you could share that with my wife and my grandkids, I'll be fine. Back when I was 16 years old, a lady named Pensy Yarborough, who was a school teacher, her son and I were great friends. And her son was telling her that I played music. And I really didn't play music. I had a little receiver, 2 little small box speakers, and an 8-track.
Ooh.
That's how far that goes back. Now, we're talking about probably 1964, maybe.
Okay.
And I had 2 8-tracks. I had James Brown and I had B.B. King.
Okay.
And so her son and I used to listen to that. That's all I had. And so one day she was having some guests over on a Saturday for a cookout. And her son had told her that I had music, and so she invited me to play for them. And so I had to go to my mom and ask for some money to get an Aretha Franklin 8-track. And so for about 3 or 4 hours, I played nothing but James Brown, B.B. King, and Aretha Franklin.
Sounds like a jam
over
to me.
And over. And I really thought that was not cool, but they loved it. And so as she began to have more activities and events, she would always invite me to come and play. Until one day she had a big event down on a farm where she lived, where she grew up. And I mean, it took busloads of people down there.
Wow.
And I had to borrow equipment and rent equipment to do it. And then I became a DJ as a result of that.
Wow.
So it continued to grow a little bit at a time. And so when I went to college, all I had was my music. I played basketball, and all I had was my music. And I would do volunteer work with the handicapped folks at Parks and Rec. It was called Poke Easy.
Poke Easy,
yes.
Okay.
And one of the little girls came up, and she couldn't remember my last name, and she says, Mr. Bill. And the name caught on. And that was 30-some years ago, 40 years now probably.
Wow.
And then in 1983, I found out I had to pay taxes because I started making some money. And so we opened a business in 1983. And one thing led to another. And when I noticed when I was in college that because I had equipment, bands would want to use my equipment. And so I started renting my equipment. But I'd always go with it because I didn't trust anybody else with it. And so they'd pay me to run the sound for them. And so as their specifics went up, in other words, they had specs that they wanted, a certain number of mics, I would buy more equipment, until I found myself doing concerts.
Wow.
Yeah. I can remember I could put all the stuff in the trunk of my little car, and then I started putting it in the trunk and the back seat of my little car. And then I kind of got concerned because I used to keep the other seat for a friend, and I ended up having to fill it up too. And so I ended up buying a little pickup truck. And I put a camper on the back of it, and I'd keep my equipment in there, and that's how I traveled for years. And then I started having to rent trailers to go on the back of the pickup truck. And then I had to buy a bigger box truck. Now I got a big old box truck. And,
wow.
And so things grew. And, after doing backyard events and then church events and family reunions, and it just kept getting bigger, conferences, conventions, concerts, I knew what it took, the type of equipment it took. And so people would say, can you help me with my church sound system? And I'd go in there and I'd tell them, well, you need to upgrade. And he says, well, what does that mean? And so I'd bring my equipment in to do a demonstration. And they said, wow, we could sound like that, And so then we started designing and installing equipment in churches. And before I knew it, one of the church members was involved with Carver High School. And he told them about me and asked me to put a sound system in the gym. And I did that, and then Winston-Salem Prep. And it just
wow,
on and on and on.
Churches, schools,
yeah.
And I know of a small business very close by here in Winston that
Yes.
you're installing as well.
Yes.
The business has just grown so much.
And we were really rolling until Corona hit.
Yeah, COVID kind of threw a monkey wrench in a few things.
It did.
So you had to pivot a little bit during that time.
Well, my wife reminded me that the blessing that we had was that we weren't in debt. Because we paid as we went. It was difficult to get a loan. Being a minority, being a small business, without a credit record in my business, it was difficult. And so I paid as I went. So everything we had, we owned. Truck, equipment.
Fantastic.
And so when the virus hit, even though we didn't have income, we didn't have expenses. Our concern was trying to keep our people working, trying to keep them working. And so we did stuff like inventory, equipment repairs, services, those kinds of things. And then we went back to the churches to do service on their equipment and that type of thing, just to keep our guys busy.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And so now we're exploding. We're getting calls from everywhere, everything.
From installing equipment
everywhere.
to
all
doing the sound.
Concerts, special events.
Oh, that's wonderful.
All over.
That's wonderful. And so that means you're hiring more people. And I'm glad it's in Winston-Salem that you're doing that.
Yes.
Because you could have gone anywhere. But let's back up a little bit because you mentioned school and I mentioned that you were a superhero. So talk a little bit about your background, where you went to school, and some of the volunteering that you do in the community.
Well, let's go back to elementary school.
Okay.
I was blessed that my folks sent me to St. Benedict's de Moore Catholic School. It was a private school. And my folks worked in R.J. Reynolds. And so I was really kind of out of place. I was probably the only factory worker kid that was in this private school because this school had doctors and lawyers and school teachers and all professional folks from the black community going to school there.
Okay.
And here I am, little boy whose parents worked in Reynolds. And so I was fortunate that I got a good background academically. And then I moved to Atkins High School because I wanted to play football.
Okay.
Bishop McGinnis wanted me to come there to play basketball because that was a great, transition from St. Benedict's to Bishop McGinnis. But they didn't have football. And so I went to Atkins and I played football, basketball, and ran track. And so then after that, I went to, I was always volunteering stuff. My folks always, they volunteered.
That's how
and
they
so
raised
I
you.
volunteered. And so I take my music to play music for people with disabilities and
Oh, that's wonderful.
industries for the blind and all that type of thing. And believe it or not, I got a lot of business from that. People start hearing about me, and they would ask me to come and do their personal events and those kinds of things. And so things grew from that. And then when I went to college, I was like the campus DJ. And then,
Really?
Yeah, I was when I was at Greensboro College, and then people from Guilford would come to the events at Greensboro and ask me to come to Guilford and do things. And then
Go Quakers.
And then High Point University. I went to High Point University.
Really?
Then Elon.
Oh my goodness.
I was playing music in all these different places because they heard about things that we were doing in A&T and Bennett. I did a lot of events for Bennett and A&T. And one of my daughters actually went to Bennett.
Okay.
And so that's kind of a little bit of the history as to how I grew.
That's amazing. That's amazing. For anyone that is listening, thinking about starting a business here in Winston-Salem, I love the fact that you made sure that you didn't go into debt. What is some advice that you would give someone thinking about starting a business, looking at their financial picture and making that plan?
Well, first of all, I was a business major in college.
That helped.
I never forget my coach when I went to getting ready for registration for classes and everything. They said I didn't have to go. I said, well, what do you mean I don't have to go? He says, well, they already signed you up. I said, sign me up for what? Nobody talked to me. He says, well, you're a PE major. I said, no, I'm not a PE major. Why am I going to be a PE major? They said, well, you're an athlete. That's what athletes do, isn't it? I said, no. I said, I want to be a business major. And so I had to go through these long lines. I had to go back and re-register. And so my major was business, and my undergraduate was business administration. And so that's a good foundation. I would think if you want to go into business, you need to learn a little bit about business law and some business concepts before you step out there, because there's a lot of people who have skills in certain areas, but they don't have fundamental knowledge of how to establish a business or how to manage one.
Yeah.
And so accounting, of course, is the language of business, and you need to have some background in those areas.
Yeah. It's great that we have so many resources that are coming up in Winston-Salem to help small business owners to be successful. There's so many resources at Forsyth Tech, and we have the incubators that are around the city. One thing that I'm proud of, I have to mention that you are the co-chair of Greater Winston-Salem's Minority Enterprise Grant Program. Talk a little bit about how that has blossomed over the past couple of years.
Well, first of all, we had a champion, and that's important to have a champion, someone of means, someone of influence. And our champion was Don Flo. And he talked about trying to help some of these small businesses because of the pandemic. And so we sat down and mapped out a little strategy and put together a committee. And Brenda Diggs was a really strong person to have involved in this. And there were several others, Alan Caldwell, who sat down and we mapped out a strategy and got the committee to come together and to come up with some policies and some procedures as to how we would select some folks to give some money away. And our champion said that he would help raise the money if we helped find the people. And so that's what we did. And then we became partners with the chamber, with the Greater Winston-Salem. And so it's just grown, and it's gotten bigger and bigger and better and better. And thanks to Miss, Deidre Miller, who's now come aboard.
Yeah, I love her.
I do too. Who has come aboard now and actually helped us with our structure and our capacity building, and she has really contributed considerably to our ability to be functional, not to be dysfunctional, and to have order and to, follow policy.
Well, I appreciate that shout out. Thank you very much. I would be remiss not to give you an opportunity to talk about your nonprofit as well. Share a little bit about that.
Well, I've always had dual lines. My wife said the other day, I guess during the pandemic, right in the middle of it, she says, you may need to set your hobby aside and get a job. There was no income coming in. But we've always had dual lines. And years ago, I worked for the Housing Authority in Winston-Salem. I was the Youth Services Director. And I did that for 16 years, and I retired.
Wow.
And when I retired, we started a nonprofit called GUIDE, Guiding Institute for Developmental Education. We call it GUIDE, G-I-D-E. And what GUIDE does is provide academic services for underserved kids in the inner city of Winston-Salem. We reach out in some other communities, but primarily we focus in the low-income communities of Winston-Salem. And we provide academic services, social-emotional learning, even to the point that we have job training, and we now have some non-traditional things like ballet and teaching piano lessons and those type to kids who ordinarily would not be exposed to that.
That's wonderful.
And we now have a new home at the Winston Lake YMCA called the Reach Center.
Oh.
And it's big and it's getting bigger, and we've got several. We got over 100 kids that we serve there. We could serve 3 times that many.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But it's just a matter of capacity and being able to fund it.
Okay. So this is in Winston-Salem. Your nonprofit's in Winston-Salem. Mr. Bill's Productions is in Winston-Salem. You grew up in Winston-Salem. What do you love most about Winston-Salem? What keeps you here and pumped up and energized about this area?
Well, it's home, and I have a lot of loved ones here. My wife and I have 5 kids and 14 grandkids.
That's a lot of grandkids.
And so that kind of keeps us in the area. But also, I have an interest in seeing Winston-Salem become all it can be. Winston-Salem has come a long ways, but still there's a lot of division here in the city. And I feel that we all have to contribute to eradicating that. And so I think people like yourself and others who have a concern for the general community, you encourage me to continue to do what I do, because I really feel like there's a tremendous amount of possibilities here. I've seen great things and great people come out of here. So I know that there's great things and great people left here to come out of here.
Yes.
And so I'd be comfortable being a contributor to that.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you for everything you do for this community. Thank you for what you're doing for the MBE. Thank you for your nonprofit and all the kids that you help.
Well, I thank God, because it ain't about me. I'm just a little kid from the hood who had it not been for the blessings that was bestowed upon me, I'd probably be locked up in jail.
Wow.
And so I'm thankful that God has protected me, and He's shown me the light. And I've had God-fearing people in my life who have told me the right way to go. And I'm determined that I'm going to fulfill that.
That's awesome. Before we wrap up, I'm wondering, is there anything that you would like to share that we didn't touch on today?
I'd like to touch on the fact that through Greater Winston-Salem and through the Black Chamber and through all other entities that deal with minority businesses, that there's unlimited potential. My granddaddy told me some years ago, he said, boy, you got to have a business. Say, because if you don't give your people no work, they're not going to have no work. And that kind of stuck with me. We talk about unemployment. Well, why can't we start some businesses and employ our own people? We got the talent. My gracious, these kids are getting these all kind of degrees and everything from colleges. We fight hard to get them in school and get them through school. And then we let them go off to other cities and counties and countries to work when they could stay right here.
Yes, we need to keep
and
them
have
here.
Everything that they need right here. This is a beautiful area. We got mountains and rivers and oceans and just about everything you could think of. We're an art-based community. We're spiritually based. I mean, all the things that you would want. And don't talk about the prosperity.
Yes.
It's here. And so let's try to keep some of these kids who are doing really well academically, and also I think we need to have another emphasis on skilled labor. And we got a lot of folks that do work with their hands. They may not be great business folks, and they may not be academians, but they have great skills, and we need to utilize that, and we need to make sure that they get the training they need, because everybody's not going to college, but they still can make a contribution to our society. I remember growing up, there was a guy who was a plumber that lived across the street, up the street a little bit from us. And he'd come home dirty every day. And he'd take a shower and come out. But I noticed that he had his own house, he had his own car. He sent his kids to college because he had skills. And we need to teach our kids that they can utilize their skills as well as their knowledge. Because there's a certain amount of knowledge and skills. And so it's just a matter of utilizing it and getting yourself trained so that you can put those skills to good work.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. For everyone listening, how can they get in touch with you, Mr. Bills Productions, or to learn more about your nonprofit?
First of all, Guiding Institute for Developmental Education, GUIDE. There's a website. And there's also on Facebook. And you can contact Mr. Bills Productions at MrBillsProductions.com. And there's a phone number, 336-602-0565. That's 602-0565. And I am a member of the Greater Winston.
Yes.
So if we need to contact me through Miss Deidre Miller, I'm sure she'll let you know how to get in touch with me.
I'll be happy to do that.
So we are available to you.
Perfect. Bill, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I really enjoyed talking with you. For everyone listening, thanks again, and until next time. We know you enjoyed this podcast today, so join us for the next episode of Greater Conversations. By the way, you can follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Be sure to smash that subscribe button. Also, be sure to visit our website at Winston-Salem.com. The views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and not necessarily those of our sponsors, distributors, or hosting companies. This podcast is copyrighted and cannot be reproduced without expressed written consent of Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. or your toast.